Hi, I'm Bonnie Greenball-Silvestri with This Week in Sarasota, and I'm here with Nina Davenport, who is the filmmaker of First Comes Love, a fantastic love story about a mother and son and their relationship. It was just wonderful. So I'm so excited to be here with her today at the Filmmakers Lounge. So Nina, it's great to meet you and get to talk to you today, and we're going to have some great coffee, I know. But I wanted to ask you about your artistic process. Your film is very self-revelatory, and I wondered if you weren't sure if you were going to have a baby or not. You decide to have a baby on your own in the film, and if how you were going to work with that. You were sort of filming your decision-making process. So I thought that was very interesting, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about how you did that.
Well, the background is that in 2000, I made an autobiographical film called Always a Bridesmaid that was about my love life and about how I was a wedding videographer wanting to get married while dating a guy who couldn't commit. And that film got a lot of attention, and so I became sort of known for it, for better or worse. So then when I found myself considering having a baby on my own and aware that I was one of many women in that situation, I thought that I was sort of the ideal person to tell this story, and I almost had to make a film about it. So I started filming right from the moment that I decided to pursue it. Mm-hmm. There were years of contemplating it, which I think there are for most women who feel like they're running out of time biologically, that they are always thinking about their plan B. Mm-hmm. And from the moment that I decided to pursue plan B, I started to film, having no idea, of course, what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really interesting. Also, you film your boyfriend at the time, and you show pictures of all of your other past suitors. And I wonder, when you talk about having made that other film, how does that impact your actual dating life when you have so much occurring on film?
That is my main concern, that after this film I'll never get a date again because you see me having a baby on camera, and it's not the most flattering moment in a woman's life. There's also a scene right after I've given birth where my hair is sticking out this far, and I look like, as my friend Steven said, the feminine monster. So that's my main concern. Will I get a date again? And especially with the internet where everyone knows everything about you. But I think what I need is a man who's confident enough to handle a strong woman with a big personality. But those men aren't so easy to find, as we know.
As we were discussing, yes. Well, what I also thought was great is we get to meet your film critic boyfriend, and he was such a great guy, but I found myself not rooting for the relationship, only because I just didn't want to see it as a fairy tale sort of princess story that I feel like we see so much of as the mother of a 2-year-old. So I was just curious what your thoughts were about that, because I was very intrigued with, where is this going to go?
That's a good point. I mean, if from the point of view of the film, I would have wanted us to break up, because I agree that so many films that even start off as feminist films end up tied up with a bow where the woman finally gets a man, and she's happy and everything's great, and that is all that matters, is did the woman find a man? I mean, we see that story over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So actually with Always a Bridesmaid, I deliberately ended it ambiguous for that very reason. And with this film, if I had stayed with John, then I might have undermined the whole mission of the film. I don't think that's why we broke up, but that is a very good point.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about the mission of the film, because I didn't see it as much of a social commentary necessarily, but there is that aspect to it, and we've been talking also about some other issues that women face. So I wonder, did you intend for it to be a social commentary?
I mean, my first goal as a filmmaker is to be an artist, to entertain and move people and provide insight and to create and all of the things that motivate any artist. But there is also an agenda that I think isn't obvious. It doesn't hit you over the head, but I would say I felt that part of why I had to share my story is that I've seen so many women go through a lot of anxiety and depression about the waning years of their biological clock, not being able to find a man. I went through that as well, and I felt like if I could provide an example of someone who did it on their own and was happy and fulfilled, that would take the pressure off of women, just to see that as an example. Because what we had in our generation was parents who were married, that's it. We didn't have any other role models. And anyone who didn't do that was considered sort of an outcast. So I felt like this is a way of normalizing it, putting it in the media. It will be on HBO on July 29th. And it's just, one of many portraits of an alternative family. And that's, people are writing about that, seems to be the way of the future in this country. I don't know if it's true, but it's definitely becoming increasingly common.
I love that that's what you wanted to do, because it is so stressful. As a woman that was living in Manhattan, and I kind of had a lot of those same experiences, and I remember going to see my doctor and saying, what should I do? I haven't met the person yet. And he was so wonderful. He said, I know I'll be delivering your baby at some point soon, and don't worry about it. And I actually cried in the doctor's office because I thought it was such an incredible thing, and it was such like a weight to be lifted off of you, because so many people ask you that question. Yeah. And particularly in Manhattan, I think it can really be difficult. Hi.
Hi. I would love a cappuccino, please. Thank you.
And I would too. Thank you.
We were talking with Steve here, our cameraman, before we started filming, and I asked him if he has children. No. What did he say? Maybe when I'm 60. Okay, yes. So this is what you encounter. Men can wait and women can. And so the numbers aren't matching up. So a lot of women end up not being able to do it with a partner.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is the other thing that I love so much about the movie, is you explain how you went through this process, what you were trying to achieve. We meet so many of your other friends who are experiencing similar issues, and I just love that part of it. And I do think that you will really inspire other women. I get so inspired by documentaries, and I think it's such an important art form for that reason. So I think that is definitely the case. I'm curious if people who have seen the film, if you've had any encounters with women who said, now, I feel better, I know it could work out, if you've had that experience at all.
I've already had, I've had people come up to me crying. There was a 25-year-old, this gorgeous 25-year-old woman at the Full Frame Documentary Festival who had seen it, and she said, I know I want a kid, and I just feel like I'm probably never going to meet a guy, and you made me feel better about it. Don't ask me why she thinks that, she's gorgeous, but whatever. So yeah, already I've seen that it seems to really have an impact on people, but not only about the single mother issue, about other issues, because it's also about my relationship with my parents, and about aging, and giving birth, and about sort of universal themes of love and friendship and family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your friend Amy, who looks practically like your twin at the beginning, I was like, no, which one? Wait. And she was just so wonderful and so supportive. I kept thinking, I wonder how Amy's doing too, because you really get to know all of the figures in your film really well. So can you talk a little bit about how having someone like her in your life has been so helpful?
I think, honestly, I do feel like, obviously I couldn't have done it without Eric because I needed his sperm, but I more feel like I couldn't have done it without Amy, because she did say to me a long time ago that if I had a baby on my own, she would help me. And just having someone say that, because I wasn't getting that, I knew I wouldn't get that from my own family. I just think kind of gave me the permission to do it in a way. So I feel so indebted to her for that. Even if she had not followed through, just having somebody say that to me helped me kind of leap off the edge of the cliff and do it. And then she has been incredibly involved in Jasper's life. You see in the film that she's basically changing diapers, helping me, and also goes to the birthing class with me and helps me with the IVF, with all the shots. And right now, while I'm at this film festival, she's staying with Jasper. So she's like his second mother.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, I did wonder. And I kind of wanted Daphne, my daughter, to play with Jasper, but it didn't quite work out that way. But she said, I want to meet him, when she was watching part of the movie, which was really cute.
That's very cute.
Yeah. But, Hillary Clinton said it takes a village, and I really felt that. Like, first of all, kudos to you for having all those people in the room with you while you had your child, because I was really nervous, and we had a doula, but I didn't want her to be with me at that time because I just didn't know if I wanted so many people in the room. So that was pretty incredible that you gave all those people that opportunity to see this amazing process. But you also say, and it's a little spoiler alert, but I don't know if I'll ever get this much attention again. And I love that part because it's so true. Everyone does really dote on you at those moments. But I love that. How did it feel? You know, you were filming, plus you had this whole extended family, but you also had so much support.
Well, the birth scene is kind of blows people away when they see it, because you usually see this kind of sanitized, very unrealistic version of birth. But it's very funny scene because they let, thank you so much, they let everyone into the hospital room, which I was so not expecting. I mean, and my friends were aggressive about getting in. So before I knew it, and then there was the camera person and the doctor, the nurse. There were like 8 people surrounding me and cheering me on during contractions, and then chattering as if they were at a cocktail party between contractions. And at one point I had to say, "Excuse me, guys, you need to focus on me." At one point I literally had to say that. They weren't, because it was kind of making it harder, because I had to push very, very hard to get him out because it was back labor, which is harder. Anyway, so it was, and then at one point I turn to the camera and I say, "I'll never get this much attention again." What I love about that line is that I didn't even know how true that was when I said it, because I wasn't really a mother yet. And it's kind of true that once you have a child, everything becomes about the child. So the days of you being the center of attention come to a screeching halt the second you give birth, basically. And this was right before I gave birth. So I kind of love that moment.
It is so true. My father-in-law always sort of makes a point to say, "Hi, Mommy," to me, you know, in front of Daphne, just so, because he said, "My daughter always tells me that I don't pay enough attention to her when I see my grandchildren," so he makes a special note to always like say hi to me first, which I love.
That's really nice.
Yeah, because it's so true, because everyone always is just like, "How's Daphne? How's Daphne?" all the time. Yeah, and what about us?
Exactly.
It's
I mean,
really
I don't mind it
point.
because I'm so, for me, the more attention Jasper gets from other people, the better, partly because he doesn't have a conventional father situation, although Eric is in his life. So the more of that I get, the better. But it's true that mothers do get ignored, and that's not such a great thing for society at large.
Which is another aspect of this film that I think is so important. And what I've really been trying to document is this experience for women that I've actually been teaching women in the law for about 6 years. And when I first started teaching it, I didn't see where there was going to be that much that would be interesting enough, particularly because I had a lot of men in the class. But as I've become a mother, I see where that is really where the gender gap really becomes so apparent. And in every other aspect of our lives, I don't feel that it is the case as much at all. But once you become a parent, it really does create this real gender gap. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I think our society doesn't do anything to help mothers. I mean, it's absolutely inexcusable and shocking how the richest country on earth does nothing to help mothers. And we know that it doesn't have to be that way. In Scandinavia, they do much more. I mean, you get like a year off of maternity leave, and your partner gets time off for maternity leave. You can split it among the two of you, between the two of you, however you choose. And it depends on which Scandinavian country you're talking about, of course, but there's just no excuse for how little support we give to mothers, and then also just how little respect you get. I mean, you get a lot of criticism and almost never any positive feedback ever. Meanwhile, how is the society, how are we functioning? Because women are raising children. It's mostly the women. Women are doing the lion's share of the work still in this country, and certainly around the world they're doing 99% of it. So it's just inexcusable. It makes me really angry, but I'm trying to be charming and nice. And even with this film, I feel like if this film were the male point of view, I would be getting into every single film festival. It would be getting a lot more attention than it is. I'm not saying it's not getting any attention, but it would be getting much more attention because people aren't even interested in the point of view of a mother. They don't even care. It doesn't even register.
Well, it's interesting because your father is a very, very conventional attorney, kind of exactly what you picture, and his reactions to your decision feel like he's kind of giving you what society's reaction would be. And so he sort of is this lone figure out there. Everyone else I thought was really supportive, and I love your sister-in-law, the one that was talking about, she was just fantastic.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. So anyway, here you have your dad kind of he was almost like, I thought, like the Greek chorus sort of saying, you know, these are the things that are going to happen, and if you are a single mother. And I just thought that was so fantastic because it happens to be coming from your father.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, you know, have you had any sort of backlash about being, being a single mother? What kind of experiences have you had?
I mean, at this point, not enough people have seen it to say. It's just been film festival audiences who've been really supportive, but by definition, people who go to film festivals tend to be pretty liberal. So I think we'll see what happens when it's on HBO, which is, the air date is July 29th. So then we'll see. I mean, but I don't know. I think it's becoming increasingly accepted. But I think, you know, I remember my dad referred to the women who worked in his office as girls. Mm-hmm. He would, according to my mom, he would ask me about my knitting and baking or home ec class in elementary school and not ask about anything else. He did not hold us as children, and he's not that uncommon for his generation. So no wonder that we still haven't gotten to a place where people understand fully what goes into raising a child. And it's so demanding and so time consuming that the society has to take measures to give mothers extra help, and fathers if they're sharing the burden equally, but they usually aren't still.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, there's another movie in the film festival that I was telling you about, and I actually was hoping to put the two films together, so I'm going to interview the other filmmaker, but it's called A Song Still Inside, and that's told from the point of view of the father, and it's so interesting. I can't wait for you to see it, to kind of see the contrast, because the father is the one that's the primary caregiver, and he's really sort of experiencing what women have generally experienced, and how he's kind of trapped in an inability to do anything for his own work because he's the primary caregiver. But it's so interesting, like the fact that you have to find a place, you know, for Jasper to stay while you come to a film festival, because we have so many things that happen that aren't within that sort of 9 to 5 time period when daycare takes place.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just incredible that, you know, we have to face on a daily basis. How are we going to do all these other things that have to happen outside of that little time period that is when daycare is usually available?
And I mean, yeah, every single hour that I'm not with Jasper, I have to account for, every single one. And a lot of the most successful men, there's a woman behind them who's taking care of everything, and those women are not getting the credit that they deserve.
No. And I always felt myself even sort of thinking, like, what do they do all day? You know, and and now I see, but before I was always thinking, like, what happens all day with these people?
I know, it's kind of hard to imagine, and the amount, every single night I have these grand aspirations for what I'm going to do after I've left work, and I never do anything ever, because every 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes there's something that he needs, something that he wants. It's just constant, and you can't, even at 4, and I mean, when they're babies, it's every 10 seconds, and you can't imagine how the time just goes by and you're not able to do anything but tend to your child. It's amazing. Luckily I enjoy it, because otherwise I'd go crazy.
Well, those are two things that I was going to mention. One is, I think if you do have a child later, you just are so, I mean, that was what I really saw with yours, and I feel like I'm the same way. Just like every little thing, I just kind of get so much out of it. Yeah, that because it's so exciting, and you've experienced a lot in life already to kind of, and I love the way that your mother talked about that, and also your friend's mother, whose name I don't remember, but when she said that she actually would choose, you know, the way we've experienced it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes in the film, where a friend of mine is trying to get pregnant, and she's decided in advance it's going to be her last attempt, and she does a pregnancy test, is not pregnant, and her mother is there, and I ask the mother, I say, you know, when you see what we go through, women in our generation, we can't find a man, we can't get pregnant. How do you feel? Would you choose our way or your way? And she thinks about it and she says, I choose your way because you're more of yourself. You get to know yourself. You're more of your own person. And to me, that, in a way, is the sort of ultimate moment in the film. It's the penultimate scene before the ending begins. And, we are making progress. Even though it's difficult and we didn't get these things that came so easily to our mothers, getting pregnant, having babies, finding men, don't come easily in our generation. We're still better off because we're understanding ourselves, having careers, experiencing the world. So we're making progress, but we still have a long way to go.
That was another thing about your mother and the things that she was saying sort of under her breath as she was wandering out of the room. And that was kind of what I wondered when I first asked you the question about how you were able to put the film together, because you captured these moments with your mother who had passed away. And those were so perfect to have there because it was kind of like she was this angel coming back in certain parts of the film.
Yeah.
And I love that part of it. And that I thought was really interesting that you happened to have. I guess you had that footage.
I mean, I'm not sure why I had that great footage of my mom. I know why I had all the footage of my nieces and nephews because, as I say at the very beginning of the film, they were so cute and I just didn't want to forget any of the adorable moments of their childhood. So I just made a point of always having a video camera with me every time I saw them. And then with my mom and dad, I don't know why I had that footage. It could be that I think at one point I was considering making a film about my mom and her identical twin because they were pretty fascinating. And that might be why I filmed the scenes of my mom. But I got scenes that just sum up my parents' entire relationship, that typify who my mom was. I mean, I had everything I needed to tell her story. And I have no recollection of this, I even recorded the message that my dad left telling me that my mom had died on my answering machine. I mean, how did I have the presence of mind to do that? I imagine that I probably didn't do it right then. I probably recorded it when I came back from France where she died. But when I was going through all this footage and discovered that I had that message, which I still could remember verbatim, it's like the most haunting thing I've ever heard in my life. I just couldn't believe that I actually had a recording of it. So that's the thing when you're making the craziness of personal documentary, is that you just don't know how something might resonate down the road when you put it in a film. And so then you start to feel like you should film everything, because all these moments that don't seem interesting, although that my mom's death, obviously that's dramatic, but little things of my parents or my niece that seem like, oh, not that interesting, are so interesting when you put them in the context of a documentary film. So I need to start filming Jasper more. I haven't filmed him in about a year, and I have to start filming.
Wow.
I know, and I missed all that cuteness. All that cuteness, gone. I need to film.
We might even have more than you have. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the other thing is, I thought that in the conclusion of the film, when we see what your grandfather had videotaped, I wondered if maybe you had some kind of a kindred connection with the grandfather, because I don't have any video of anything that happened in my family. So the fact that your grandfather had recorded so much, I thought was really interesting, and I wondered if you had some kind of a connection with him because of that.
Well, that's an example of something that I decided to leave unsaid in the voiceover narration. It's always hard to decide when you're doing a personal film that you narrate when to sort of lead the audience and when to let them come to their own conclusions. And in that case, the fact that I am a documentary filmmaker, my father documented our childhood, his father documented his childhood. It shows that I do have a big part of my father's side in me, even though I mostly talk about how wonderful my mother was. And I somehow liked having that unspoken, but people do seem to pick up on it. So yeah, definitely. And my grandfather was his stepfather was friends with Eastman Kodak. They lived in Rochester.
Oh, wow.
And I think that may have been one of the reasons that he was influenced to take his cinematography very seriously. And it's beautifully shot. He shot a lot of stuff, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I had not seen, I was in a state of shock when I first looked at it. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was, and these crisp, gorgeous images of my father as a beautiful young boy in black and white and in color.
Yeah.
And the feeling I had when I watch it is what I say in the film, which is that I just suddenly had this compassion for my father, seeing him as a little boy. It was like a revelation. And especially I looked at it on a little viewer at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, where my friend manages the collection. So it was like very tiny, and which means the resolution was even more clear. And I just was so moved. I could barely speak when I first saw those images.
Wow.
And there was a lot to choose from.
I just was reminded, I was once on the bus with this girl, and she said that they were doing a screening of a Warhol movie, and she said that she was related to one of the factory girls, and she wanted to see her grandmother on film, and she was like maybe 18, and she was on the bus with me on the way to the Whitney, and I thought, oh, that is so cool. I can't even imagine how great that would be to get to see your grandmother in that way on film.
It was amazing, and these images were shot in the 30s, the 1930s. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And just there's scenes where you can see that he staged it, where he's doing self-portraits, and also where it's lit, and it's very, you can tell it's very sort of almost directed and really professional. I mean, you would think it was shot by a professional cinematographer, but meanwhile he was a dermatologist.
That's great. Well, I love your movie, and I hope that we didn't give too much away to the audience, but it's still so important to see this movie. I think that you are really a pioneer. You're really putting it out there about parenting, which I think is so important and is so infrequent, really. I mean, as we talked about, there's so many movies where things are tied up neatly in a bow, but not as much of this sort of love story of parenting, which I thought was just incredible, and I loved it. It kind of made me think of like Mary Cassatt and how much I love her work, and just that relationship of a mother and child that I think is so crucial for us to see. So I really appreciate that you were able to put this out to the world, and the fact that you spent so much time with me. I really appreciate it. It was great to get to meet you.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's great to meet you too. Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve.
Any final thoughts about Sarasota? I know you love it here.
I love this town, and I want to come back next year and be on the jury of the film festival if they'll have me. If they will have me, I'm coming, because I love it here.
Great. Here's your candidacy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.